Excellent. Here we go. People are starting to turn up. David Ross, Serena. Dave Stokes, how you doing, Dave? Georgie Smith. Excellent. Got people tuning in. Fantastic. G'day, everybody. Thanks so much for coming along. G'day, Anetta. Just going to give people a second to connect.
Hello, everyone.
Great. Okay, I think everybody's people have kind of connected, so I think we'll get going and people can just tune in when they get here. So g'day everybody, thanks so much for tuning in. We know everybody's really busy, so we appreciate you taking the time to listen to Katrina and I today. So just the usual, if everybody could just, or a few people just say a quick hello in the chat box, just to make sure we're not sitting here talking to ourselves, make sure you can hear us. Yep, Dave Stokes, excellent. Thanks, everybody. Fantastic. Okay, so thanks for tuning in to this webinar on partnerships today. I've been on many publishing webinars in the last few years, but today you're tuning into the first ever official Publish Central webinar. So you get to say you knew us before we were famous. I also promised not to press the wrong button halfway through and shut the whole thing down. So fingers crossed anyway, we'll see how we go. Now, there's many familiar faces here today, but I'm just going to introduce myself quickly because there's also a few people we don't know who've tuned in. So I'm Michael Hanrahan. I'm the founder and director of Publish Central. So I'm a former managing editor at John Wiley & Sons, and I've been helping entrepreneurs self-publish books for small business for over 20 years. I'm also the co-founder of the Australian Business Book Awards. So that's me in a nutshell, and I've got an awesome library behind me. So, so we specialize in what we call self-publishing for small business. So this is our area of expertise. Today, we're going to be looking at how you can use partnerships to boost your publishing and boost your business. The aim of this webinar is to demonstrate how powerful partnerships can be and to provide some idea generation for how you can use partnerships in your own business. We expect the session to go for about 60 minutes. There'll be time for questions at the end. So if you could hold your questions and put them in the chat box. And the webinar is being recorded and will be available to everybody who is registered. So for those who don't know, this is Katrina. Katrina McCarter. She's going to introduce herself in just a second. I'm just going to say a few more words. I'm just going to quickly mention how powerful partnerships have been for my business over the years. So I've been in business for over 20 years and we've done zero marketing in that time. A large part of that is due to the partnerships that we've developed. So we've got partnerships with business coaches, writing coaches, printers, designers, and all of them send work our way. And the partnership side of that is we either pay them a commission or we help them with content. We do retreats with them. We do webinars with them, all that sort of thing. So partnerships have been a very big part of our business over the last 20 years. So we know firsthand how powerful they can be. Just in case you're thinking that a partnership is a big undertaking, so you might think, oh my God, I've got to get lawyers and sign agreements and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't have to be that sort of thing. Partnerships can be very simple. This webinar today is a partnership. So Katrina had an idea for a webinar that she wanted to present to authors. We run a publishing business and we've got lots of authors. So Katrina approached us with the idea. We had a chat, worked out what we wanted to say, how it was all going to work. We had a run through yesterday in which there were absolutely no technical difficulties whatsoever.
Not one.
Not one. It all went perfectly smoothly. And then today we're all here with you, with you wonderful people. So partnerships can be that easy. So you don't need to take my word for it though. Katrina's definitely the expert and I'll hand over to her.
Fantastic. Look, a really big thanks, everyone. First of all, I just want to say thanks to Michael for accepting my partnership pitch to actually come and speak to you today. I've actually worked with Michael myself. Michael and Publish Central have published my second book, The Mother of All Opportunities. I'm just going to share my screen with you now, and I have prepared a presentation that we are going to run through probably for about 30 to 40 minutes, 45 minutes, depending on just how we get into this. And then we're going to open up for those Q&As. So I'm really, really open to, you can ask me anything partnership related, and I would encourage you to put those into the chat. But what I'm really wanting to do is to open up some ideas for you as an author, an existing author, or you might be a 2-time or 3-time author. I want you to think about different ways that you might be able to use partnerships. And I also want to say that if you're an aspiring author, this is really relevant for you to be thinking about how you could use partnerships at every stage of the journey. So straight up, I want to say a massive hello to you all. I want to also kick off and tell you a little bit about how I discovered partnerships, because to me, I stumbled across partnerships over a decade ago. About 11 years ago, I launched my first business, which was an online shopping website for mums, and it was called Bubbler. And I really, really was struggling to grow this business. And I remember doing some paid advertising, and I think I threw $300 at a ad in a specialist parenting newspaper, thinking that this was just going to generate so many leads for me and people signing up and coming over to my website. And I heard absolute crickets. I felt like I may as well have winded down the window and started throwing out $50 bills, because there was zip result out of this. And I remember calling a woman who had another online parenting community over the other side of Australia. And we kind of got talking and shared our startup stories, as you do. And I told her, just how tough I was finding it in terms of getting results on my paid advertising. And just kind of on a whim, I said to her, how about if we ran a joint competition together, and for people to enter, they'd have to sign up to both of our newsletters? And she just straight up said, yep, I'm in. She said, but I'd love you to try and get a third player involved. So I was feeling fairly bold at the time. As you can see behind me, I live by the mantra, be bold. And I rang up the founder of the largest online parenting community in Australia at that time, which was Stay at Home Mum. And I asked Jodie, I said, I could find a really good prize. Would you be interested in joining us? And she had an enormous community. And she said, yeah. And over the next kind of 3 weeks, it took me to secure someone to give us 2 Thermomixes as our great prize. We went ahead and we ran a competition over 10 days. This is the graphic that I produced. It cost me about $50 to produce. And over the next 10 days, I added more than 7,000 new members to my community. And this for me was just mind-blowing. For me to have done this via paid advertising would have cost me in excess of $10,000 at the time. So to be able to do this for, $50 for the graphics and a bit of time to negotiate the different players was for me quite a revelation, and it really transformed the way I ran my business, because the whole business was valued around the size of my newsletter. So over the next 5 years, every month I would have a joint competition where I would partner and collaborate with another business that had the same audience as I did, but wasn't in direct competition. And we would run this short-term competition. And this enabled me to grow a community of 150,000 mums across Australia. And I was able to sell this business in 2016, and I had a really, really valuable asset. So that for me, I just wanted to share with you in terms of my discovery of partnerships. And today, I'm a big believer that partnerships, everyone has this ability to be kind of one good partnership away from kind of real success. And for me, there's a great opportunity for authors, for podcasters, for presenters, speakers, to really harness partnerships. And I really want to hone in on how you might be able to use this as an author or an aspiring author today. But before I do, I'll just share a little bit about who I am. You might be wondering, what is it that I do? After selling my business Bubbler, I launched a business called Marketing to Mums. And essentially, I'm a marketing and research consultancy. And I work with funded startups right through to corporates and help them attract more mothers and their families to their business. So that's really kind of what I've been known for the past 6 or 7 years. Back in 2016, I launched my very first book, which was called Marketing to Mums, which went #1 on Booktopia's business bestseller list. That was, one of those complete kind of pinch me moments at the time. In 2019, under Publish Central, working with Michael, I actually launched my second book, which is called The Mother of All Opportunities, that went on and went into the ABBA Awards and picked up, was a finalist in that award as well. I'm a very prolific researcher, and I'm going to show you a little bit about how you might be able to get research statistics for your books through partnerships. And I share my research information right around the world, and I regularly speak in the States, sharing research data around mums. I've also got a podcast, the Marketing to Mums podcast, and actually only last month I launched my second podcast, which is the Marketing with No Money podcast. And I also more recently, probably over the last 3 years, have become known for partnership mastery. And that's really what we're talking about today, partnerships. And I work with small business owners and entrepreneurs and help them kind of identify and secure their own partnerships. It's just something that I'm very, very passionate about. So just before we get right into the 7 ways that you might be able to use partnership, I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page, and want to talk about, what I believe a partnership is. And to me, it's quite simply, it's when 2 or more parties come together for mutual benefit. So you might hear someone talk about a collab, a collaboration. You might hear people throw around the words JV or a joint venture or sponsorship. Partnerships, I lump them all under the one umbrella, under partnerships. To me, they're just different types of partnerships, but they all fall under the one umbrella. A really successful partnership to me has 3 core elements, and one is that you share the same audience, but you're not in direct competition with whoever it is that you're partnering with. That would be the first thing that I'm always looking for. The second thing is that there's this equal exchange of value taking place. Now, sometimes it might just be a social media exchange where you might post about someone else's business or book, and they might post about your book. It might be that kind of simple, but there's kind of this perceived equal exchange of value taking place. The third principle is often overlooked by people, and one that I always like to hone in on, and that is that all the people in the partnership have got the same kind of ethics or shared values. And the reason I always make such a big song and dance about this one is that this one has tripped me up in the past. Back in about 2013, I partnered with a business that, we did a great joint competition together. Everything went really, really smoothly. At the end of the competition, we exchanged the newsletter list, and then they went out and started spamming that new list about 2 or 3 times a day. And it just was not in keeping with the way that I communicated with my community. And boy, did my community let me know about it. And I really want to save you that pain, and just say it's really important that you pre-qualify a potential partner. You do your homework on them. You see how they might treat a new prospective kind of person in their community, by either signing up to their newsletter just to see how they communicate. But definitely what you want to see is that there are that you've got the same kind of way of doing things, that there's an alignment there. So just one thing that I do like to highlight. But one of the things that I really want to share with you is that, look, I've told you I've been doing partnerships now for about 11 years. Now is the most ideal time to be looking at partnership as a strategy for your business. And the reason I say that is that there are so many businesses that have been impacted by the pandemic, and a lot of brands have had their marketing budgets slashed. And those businesses are looking for new ways to get things done. And this opens up enormous opportunities for authors, speakers, podcasters to collaborate with some pretty big brands. And I want to say to you that, now's the time to, if you want to put your toe in the water and explore partnerships, I encourage you to do it. So what we're wanting to talk about today is really about 7 ways that you could use partnerships. And this is all just to try and give you some ideas. So I'm going to share some stories with you. I'm going to show you examples of how each of these strategies could be used. So I'm going to say, please, grab a piece of paper, grab some pens. I want you to record down ideas that come to mind as you hear about these strategies going forward. So first up, the very first way that you could use a partnership, and one that's often overlooked, is using a partnership or collaborating with another business just to position your business, or it might be, or to position your book or you as an author in the marketplace. And I'll show you how this might work. I spoke a little bit earlier about my first business, Bubbler, and it was a group buying site for families. And when I said to people, hey, I'm launching a group buying site for families, everyone without question told me about their bad experience buying a voucher from Groupon or Scoopon. And I was very much like this. So I knew that I had to be seen to be really, I needed to have that credibility and endorsement around being customer focused as well. So I partnered up with the playgroup associations. The playgroup associations had been helping my market, my target audience for decades. They were seen as highly credible. They were seen as really supportive. So by partnering with them, I was seen as being credible and trustworthy, which was really, really important in terms of positioning my business. So that's one way that you could use a partnership to position yourself. The other way is, when I launched my second book, The Mother of All Opportunities, I actually launched that in New York. And I partnered with the world's leading event for people in the marketing to moms space. And by doing that, I shifted the focus of people seeing me as a marketing to mum specialist in the Australian market to being seen now as a global expert in this space. So that's how I used a partnership to do that, to position me as that international author and an expert in the area. So that's just kind of 2 examples of how you could position yourself as an author or as a business that partnerships can really help you achieve that. The second way that I want to say how you might consider using a partnership as an author or an aspiring author is to actually fund your book. I know when I was looking to write my first book, I remember Andrew Griffiths tapping me on the shoulder and saying, Katrina, I think it's time now that you write down about your passion for marketing to mums. And I was terrified about publishing, writing my first book and putting it out to the market. And then I did the numbers in terms of putting together the costs that were going to be involved. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if I could, partner with an organization to help fund, writing my book, printing my book, all of those things. And I thought, who else is talking to my audience? Now, I knew when I wrote my book, I was really writing this for a small business owner who was likely to be a woman who was also selling to mothers. And I thought, who else is trying to talk to this women in business, small business owner audience? And I thought, well, women have been entering business at almost 3 times the rate of men for the past decade. Surely Xero might want to talk to them because there's so many of them are small business owners. So I wrote to Xero and I told them that I was going to be, publishing this book. And they came on board. They called it a sponsorship because that's the language that they use in their organization. And we were able to partner, and that covered, my editing costs and my printing costs for my book. Now, what I did in exchange for them, what they really wanted was my bookmark to have a co-branded bookmark, but I'd already given that to somebody else. So what we came up with was a downloadable that people could download off my website that was proudly brought to you by Xero. And that was 20 quick wins that one of my readers could make in their business after reading the book. So I'm sure that, I'm hoping this is sparking some ideas for you as to how, if you're thinking about writing your second or your third book or even your first book, how you might be able to partner up with a business to do so.
Was it difficult to get Xero on board, Katrina? Did that take a lot of convincing, or?
The actual negotiation was done over 3 weeks. I never met them in person, so it was all done via written correspondence and a couple of phone calls. So no, it's really about, again, coming back to being bold and pitching it. A lot of people just don't ask, and if you don't ask, you're not in the running. So I had a pitch document that I put together, and that's something now that I teach my clients. And it's about making sure that you understand what they might be trying to achieve and how you can help them achieve their goal. And that's really what it was. It was about building connections with women in business.
And so you had no prior relationship with Xero before that, and they came on board for your book?
No, and I didn't know anyone at Xero. I didn't know anyone at Xero either. So please, if you're thinking that you need to have a network, you need to have a series of introductions, etc., and that you need to have warm relationships first, I'm here to tell you, no, my best partnerships have come cold, completely cold, and I actually like doing the cold pitches, and yeah, no, they can definitely work. I wanted to highlight another Publish Central client and also a client of mine, Steph Thompson, who wrote The Day My Vagina Broke. Steph has actually used partnerships not to actually put, she's actually used it to do her reprints of her book. So she partnered up with Modibody, who speaks to her audience as well. And they've formed a partnership where they've actually paid for, essentially covered the costs of the reprint of her book. So you can use these in many different ways. Steph has actually also gone on to use it not to just fund her book, but she has also used it to fund a short film around invisible disabilities, and she partnered with Toyota. So this is a one-woman operation. I'm a one-woman operation in my business as well. So I want to highlight to you that don't think that because you're a micropreneur or an author that you can't partner up with a really large big brand as well. So I'm hoping that this is giving you some encouragement to put your hat in the ring and try. So that's the second way you could use partnerships. The third way is to actually distribute your book. I remember after I just got my first copy of my first book, I went up to the Australia Post and I went to go and put one in an envelope in a package and post it off, and they said, oh, that'll cost you $8.95. And I was like, geez, this could get expensive. And I thought, who else is trying to talk to my small business audience who's in the delivery space? And I identified a courier online business that I really liked. I had been watching them in the media for a long time. I really liked how innovative they were. And so I approached them. Again, I knew nobody there. I reached out to their CEO, who then bumped me to their CMO. And I got a phone call and I did my pitch, and they said, look, we don't do these kinds of things. And I said, well, here's a great opportunity to put your toe in the water and see how it goes. And that's what they did. And I partnered with Sendle, and they distributed my book, which worked out to covered the cost for the first year of distribution of all the postage for my book through their courier service. So, that's another way that you could potentially consider using a partnership to help you on your author journey. Then I want to say is that you could actually use a partnership to launch your book. I know that a lot of people are happy to spend $3,000 to bring all their friends into their room and a couple of their clients and fund a very expensive night to launch their book. I am someone, I grew up with a single mum. I'm very careful about how I spend my money. So when it came time to launching my book, I was looking for, where is there an existing event that has my ideal audience that I could partner with to launch my book from the stage. And so what I did is I found an upcoming conference that had 250 women in business, predominantly small business owners. And I spoke at their conference and I waived my speaker fees in exchange for being able to launch my book from the stage, and to also have the MC to do a plug and to also be able to sell my book from the event. My only tip here is I wish I bought more suitcases of my books. I sold out in 2 seconds, and I should have had someone who was there doing the FPOS machine for me because it was ridiculously chaotic. But that was a way that I could launch in front of my ideal audience, and it didn't cost me a cent. So I'd encourage you to think about that. Now, many of you will say, Katrina, we're in a pandemic. Not everywhere is doing live events yet. You know, that actually becomes a bit tricky. My book launch is coming up soon. Don't underestimate a virtual launch. One of my clients actually was coming up to launch her book, Profit First for Tradies, and she had a look at, well, who has my ideal audience? And she teamed up with a business called TradiePad, and they hosted the launch, and they did a really, really fabulous launch of her book that, again, didn't cost her any money. So be thinking about ways that you might be able to launch your book and get in front of your ideal audience as well through partnerships. Now, the fifth strategy that I'm wanting to talk about that I think is really, really important for authors to be thinking about is growing your profile through partnerships. And I actually write, I've got what I call content marketing partnerships. And I think every author or aspiring author should be looking to form a content marketing partnership. And this is where you partner with a news outlet or someone that has the audience that you are wanting to speak to or that your book caters for. And you can write articles for them on a regular basis that enables you to talk about some of the principles that might be in your book. One of the things that I did with my second book, The Mother of All Opportunities, I actually wrote that as a series of articles, so that when it was published, I was able to take articles directly out of my book. I would have had about 30 of them, and I could put them through different content marketing partnerships to be republished. And that would allow me to essentially promote my book, but also position me as the author of this particular book and of this subject matter. So I would be encouraging you to be thinking about content partnerships, content marketing partnerships, where you might be able to promote your book and also position yourself as the expert in your field. Furthermore, I recommend that you form, that you collaborate with relevant journalists. I have spent time identifying who are the relevant journalists for my Marketing to Mums business, who speaks to that audience and who writes about that audience. And I've contacted them and sent them a copy of my book, let them know that I can talk about these particular topics and that I can be a source. Now, that's become a great partnership for me whenever I'm launching a new book or some research. I can go back to those people and let them know that, hey, here's some subjects that I can be talking about. And that's resulted in a number of full page articles in mainstream media. So be thinking about how you might be able to partner with journalists as their content source as well. Now, there's 6. I hope you're getting some ideas here. So please.
I certainly am.
Okay, please write them down. And if it makes you think of something else that you might be able to do, please capture that moment now. The 6th strategy that I want to talk to is actually promoting your book. look, your book's launched. You might have had, like I've had a book, The Mother of All Opportunities. I'm still promoting that book, and that was launched in 2019. It's really about leveraging it and having a look at how I could use partnerships to do that. One of the ways that I've done that is I've teamed up with other organisations that might have a similar audience, or they might be the audience that my book speaks to. And we've run a joint webinar, much like we're doing right now, like I'm doing right now with Michael. And that allows me to get in front of my ideal audience, and I can talk about subjects that are covered within my book. So you might be able to do that if you're comfortable speaking. That's certainly a great way that you can be adding value to someone who already has that audience, and you can be helping their community and their members. I call this a distribution partnership, and every author should be looking for multiple ways that they can form distribution partnerships. That might be another way, might be to go in and do a Q&A in someone's closed Facebook community. Or it could be as simple as you doing a social media exchange, where you might team up with another author that talks about a different topic but talks to the same audience. And you might say, I'm going to write a little blurb or a write-up about your book being launched, and I'd love you to do the same for me. So that can be another really simple thing. It's not going to cost you a cent, that you might be able to replicate out there. Now, the seventh way, and the final way that I want to tell you today in terms of how you might be able to use partnerships, is to save money. And this is something I always am looking at ways that I can use partnerships to save money and add value to my partner as well. Now, one of the things that I'm finding increasingly I'm getting asked by authors or aspiring authors is that they're wanting to do research for their book, to get statistics together that they're going to include in their book. This is something that I do myself, and it provides really good credibility and authority in the space to have that real primary data. But I can tell you it's really expensive to do market research. I undertake a lot of this work for clients, but one of the key costs is actually getting a survey completed. That can cost you, $6 for every single person that completes that survey. So it can be really, really expensive. So one of the ways that I've tackled that is with partnerships. And I've found a partner that I go to that has my audience of mums, and I can put my survey through their community, and they sign on to get a certain number of those of those surveys completed. So is there a way, if you're looking to get really great statistics that you can include in your book, that you could partner up with an organisation to do some joint research together? That's going to save you a lot of money, and it's going to really build your credibility within your book. Another way is many authors end up going in and launching a podcast. I think I've seen lots and lots of author friends that have gone on and launched a podcast, and you can actually fund your podcast through partnerships. When I, for the first year of my Marketing to Mums podcast, that was completely funded by a marketing partner. For them, there was great value in them having an audio ad within each of my episodes. It allowed them to talk to their ideal audience on a regular basis. It also enabled them to distribute my content and my episodes out to their community as well. So that might be of interest to you. But I want to say you can use partnerships in so many different ways. One of the ways that I have used it is that I do a lot of speaking. There used to be a lot of in-person speaking events. And one of the things that you need to know about me is that I loathe ironing beyond comprehension. In fact, I don't own clothes that need ironing. I hate ironing. So for speaking, I found this great designer who did great wrap dresses, and I could roll them up in a ball, literally put them in my bag, fly to the event, get off the plane and not have to iron my dress, and it would look good. So I thought, listen, surely they're wanting to I'm talking to a predominantly female audience in a lot of instances. Maybe they'll be interested in partnering with me and they could dress me for my speaking events. And I reached out to them and I got no response whatsoever. And then I thought, well, that was going directly to the designer. So I thought maybe I'll find another avenue. I'll find what Gabby from Catch of the Day might call the third door. It's all about creating a new way in. And I approached their customer service team. And what transpired was for the next 6 to 9 months, they dressed me in beautiful new season gear for every speaking event. So that saved me considerable amounts of money. So I just want to say, and the reason I'm sharing this one with you is that there is no rules with partnerships. You can use these in so many different ways, but you need to find out what's going to be most meaningful for your business. And
I think judging by the chat box, it's going to be saving doing ironing.
yeah, completely. Yeah. So listen, just in terms of a wrap up, we've talked about 7 ways that an author might be able to use a partnership to really kind of elevate, to bring their book to life and to really leverage it. And one of those we spoke about was really positioning your business. As I said, often overlooked by many authors. I really encourage you to be thinking about that one. You could use it to fund your book, distribute your book, launch your book, really grow your profile and become the expert in your area that your book talks about. You can use it to promote your book and clearly, as I've spoken to, you can use it to save money. My challenge is for everyone here listening today is to commit to using partnerships to bring your book to life, whether that be your first, second, third, or fourth book. Partnerships have got so much use here for an author, and I really encourage you to embrace them and learn about how you could really use them in your business. Now, what I hear from a lot of people is that, yep, that's great. I understand that that partnerships are powerful. I'm just not all that confident in doing them. Typically what people come to me and say is, Katrina, that's awesome. I get that I could use them in lots of different ways, but I'm not quite sure where I should start. Nor do I know who would actually be a really good partner for me, or what I could potentially ask for, or what I could really offer them. So that kind of commonly comes up from people that I work with. And so what I do have is I have a 6-week partnership mastery program where I actually teach you the skills on how to identify and successfully negotiate your own partnerships to help you, whether it's fund your book or etc., whatever that is. And with that comes, we have 6 masterclass, so 1 a week over 6 weeks. We have 3 group coaching sessions, and that's really that opportunity to ask me anything partnership related, and there's obviously mentoring support with me. I also provide a lot of templates through that so that you can see how to put together a pitch, and there's a really lovely community and certainly lots of case studies of how other people are using them. If that is something that is of interest to you, you are more than welcome to reach out to me. We are kicking off on the 2nd of March, so on a Wednesday. And you can, if you want to find out a little bit more about that, you can book a 30-minute discovery call with me, or simply email me at katrinamccarter.com. So that's if you'd like to have a little bit more support and help in how to do that for yourself. But what I'm really keen to do is, I haven't jumped into the chat yet, so I'm really keen. Michael, I know that you've been having a look in the chat. I'm really keen to know, out of the 7 kind of ideas or ways that I've shared with you how you might use a partnership, can you tell me in the chat, out of those 7, and I'll go back to them, which one really resonated for you? Was there one that stood out that you went, I'm going to have a crack at that? I think that one is for me. Can you just tell me in the chat which one of these 7 ideas really spoke to you? And then we might hand over to Michael to perhaps ask me a few of the questions that have come through.
Yep. Grow your profile.
Starting a podcast.
Yep.
Great. What about if we can hear from a couple more? I'd love to hear what's resonated for you. Position yourself. Yes, Peter.
Yeah. A couple of people saying launching the book.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Georgie's come through launching my book at one of the big conferences in my sector. Have a look. Look at this from a positioning angle as well. Think about where is the best place. What's the best conference that's really going to position me at the top end of town? So for me, I launched my book my second book from the stage at the Marketing to Mums event in New York. And that really kind of helped position me in the market. Okay, book launch. Yeah, no, fantastic. So Michael, I'm going to hand over to you. I know that you've been keeping a track of some of the questions that have been coming through. I'd love to see if you want to be the voice for everyone on the session.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll try and manage these questions are coming through thick and fast now. I think the most popular one is, how do you avoid ironing? You really hit a nerve with the ironing. No, so we've got quite a few people asking about book launches. That was very popular. So there's one specific question here. Where was it? Just going back a tiny bit. So someone's asked, do you have a general formula? This is Dave Stokes. Do you have a general formula for contacting potential partnerships or sponsors? So I think that's a really interesting question. I think one thing people find a bit daunting is, like you talked about, cold calling people. And, I'll just tell a quick story because I think it's really interesting. We had an author a couple of years ago who wanted to get an endorsement from Janine Ellis, and he'd never contacted Janine Ellis before, never met her, never had anything to do with her. Sent the book. Janine Ellis loved it, and he's got a quote from Janine Ellis on the cover of his book. So people often say, "Oh my God, I can't contact that person because they're big and famous or whoever they are." Don't be afraid to do that. And I'm sure partnerships are the same.
Very, very much so. Yeah. In terms of kind of process, before I ever have a client even reach out, there's a whole lot of pre-work that I take my clients through. And we do that kind of in the program is really, first up, you really need to understand, first of all, what's your business objective? What is it that you're trying to achieve? Because partnerships could be a real shiny object. You could lose yourself entirely in just doing partnerships all day long and not actually get your work done. So I'm really, really strategic in all of my partnership approaches, and I like my clients to be as well. So we always start with, what is it that we're trying to achieve in the business, as an author? What is it that we want to achieve? And then we get really clear around, we do what I call an asset audit, and we have a look at all the things that you could potentially offer in a partnership conversation. And what typically comes through for a lot of people at that stage is, oh my goodness, I don't have to create anything new. I didn't realize that all these things would be so valued. And they feel a lot of confidence by just going through that as well. And it's a really important foundation piece, because you not only want to identify what are going to be probably the top 5 to 8 that are likely to really resonate with all sorts of partners, but you want to know everything that you've got, so that if you're in the middle of a negotiation with someone, you can kind of gauge from the conversation, based on what they tell you is important to them, what you've got to play with. So doing that exercise is really, really critical. And then we actually start brainstorming potential partners. And I'm someone who really looks for some left field options as well, not the obvious ones. I find that unexpected partnerships, if there's alignment, really are super, super effective. So that is something that we look to include on that brainstorming list. And then we go through and we do a week of just pre-qualifying partners. Sometimes pre-qualifying a partner might take 2 to 3 months. It depends on what it is that you're trying to achieve there, and who the potential partner is. And we go through, pre-qualify them, and then we start thinking about how we're going to approach them. So it is quite a process, but for me, the most important thing before anyone ever makes an approach is that they're super clear on what they've got to play with and offer up. Dave Stokes, I hope that helped
answer your question, Dave. Yep. Excellent. Next one is from Georgie. G'day, Georgie. We've been working on your cover this morning. Quick question from Georgie. My business is pre-launch. How much of a hindrance will it be if she doesn't have runs on the board already?
Not a hindrance. It depends on your assets and how valued your assets are. So you don't have to, certainly it adds value. I will say when I am forming partnerships with other organisations or people, I do look to see if they've had partnership experience before, because then I know it's most likely to be a smoother sale, and I'm going to have to do less education about what my expectations are. But it certainly wouldn't necessarily deter me from forming a partnership with someone who hadn't had partnership experience. So I think what's important is the asset, is getting those 5 to 8 things right.
Fantastic. Does that help, Georgie? Any more questions?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay.
Thanks. So another one we've got here for you, Katrina, is Susan Bryant is saying several people she has approached for partnerships have actually ended up stealing her ideas. Have you got any tips for handling that?
Yeah, look, it is a risk. It can probably, if I were working with you, Susan, I'd probably have a look at how you're pre-qualifying your potential partners first, because if they're pinching your ideas, they're not really of the same. They don't have the same business ethics as I imagine you do. So I'd have a look at how you're pre-qualifying them at the moment, first up. And then I would also, you can have a memorandum of understanding if it's a really big, involves a lot of money or a lot of IP, then you might want to actually draw up some kind of memorandum of understanding or some non-disclosure agreement before you move into sharing your partnership ideas. I also, whilst I might go into a partnership meeting having an idea of what I want to pitch, I will always let my prospective partner speak first, because they might have some other really great idea that I may not have thought of yet. And I allow them the opportunity to share their ideas first and foremost, just to see if that eventuates. And if they haven't got that, that's when I would come in and say, well, this is what I was thinking. But always kind of open it up to them first. But yeah, I think in answer to your question, Susan, you might want to consider a non-disclosure or have a look at how you're pre-qualifying prospective partners.
Fantastic. I'm going to jump in with a question myself, Katrina. Which of the 3 principles that you mentioned at the start do you find trip people up the most?
The equal exchange of value.
Okay.
Yeah, always, because people will say, well, I don't understand what's equal, because you have, and it's perceived equal. You just need to sit. I always encourage people to sit in the shoes of their potential partner. Mm-hmm. Is it clear of what's in it for me as that potential partner? Does that turn me on in any way? Like what they're offering, does that get me excited in any way? Does it feel equal sitting on the other side of the fence? And look at it from their eyes as well. That will give, it's a good kind of little check that you can do before you send anything off, is to go, if I were them, would I want to go for this deal? So yeah, it always trips people up about what's equal. And the big danger of what I would say, if anyone here is a micropreneur, solo operator, or a small business, and they're trying to hatch a deal with a big player, typically what I see is that small operator will offer up everything. Will offer up so much more than they need to the big brand. It becomes really onerous on them to satisfy the partnership. It's not fun. It may not be delivering everything that they wanted to, because they so desperately wanted to partner with that big brand. Yeah. The big brand doesn't always need as much as you think. How they see value. So I think it's important as a small business owner just to be thinking, okay, am I offering up too much? Is this something that I can maintain, like for whatever I'm pitching? Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I think Trina's got a really good question that I saw here. How do you manage running a business and writing a book?
Yes.
Yeah, I think this is such a really good question, Trina. It doesn't get asked frequently. It's a real juggle. I actually plan for when I'm writing a book. I only write a book every 3 years, specifically because if I'm writing a book, it's taking me away from income producing time because I'm a one-woman show running two different businesses. So I typically will write a book 3 days a week. And I will, for a period of time of about 6 weeks, I will write 3 days a week, and I will work 3 to 4 days a week, and I actually plan for that, and that's how I approach it. So it is definitely a juggle, but it can be done. And if you've got someone who is funding the book as well, like that can minimize that impact. You can then, take more time out because you're actually deriving an income from going off and writing as well. So that's one way to approach it. That's certainly how I handled my podcast. Is I knew how much time it was going to take to find the guests, research the guests, record the interviews, etc. I wanted to be reimbursed for that time.
You've got the next book in the works as well, don't you, Katrina?
I do. I'm actually doing a partnership book. And again, so at the moment, I've got 2 books on marketing to mums. So I've got 2 businesses, though. I don't have a book for partnerships. So you will see me very strategically be coming up with a book on partnerships in 2022.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So I think we've come to the end of the questions there. Does anybody else want to jump in with any more questions there before we sign off?
We've got one here from Peter. Now you've got me considering partnerships for my upcoming International Women's Day event. Yes, Peter. In a short time frame, what's the main thing? What's the main thing? It would be a mistake to rush. I'm not sure how you're wanting to use a partner for the International Women's Day event. Maybe if we can get a little bit more information, I can help. To attract attendees, you are looking for distribution partners. Straight up, Peter. So you're looking to who has got the audience that would love to see you speak at that event. And I would be seeing what it is that you could do for them in order for them to promote the event for you. Would be straight up what I'd be looking for.
Yeah, excellent. Quick one from Luke Mathers. Who would you partner with for a book about teenage mental health? Have you got any ideas for that?
Okay, so I'd be saying who's going to read that book, Luke? It's likely to be a parent, and I'm going to say it's probably more likely to be mum than dad. It depends on which kind of generation you're talking about. But I'd be saying who else is talking to that audience, and I'd be looking then to see that's where I'd start. Who else is talking to my reader's audience, to my reader audience? Where can I find them? And how could we find some alignment between what we're both trying to do? That's where I'd be doing, or I'd be looking at which brands sell to a teenagers. That would be another avenue. Have a look at the work that Patagonia does. Patagonia have recently teamed up with Beyond Blue, and they've created they've done experiential days where they've done things out on Sydney Harbour that have really excited the Gen Z community, who's their core audience as well. So have a look at what other people are doing as well. But yeah, have a look at who's talking to that audience. I think everyone here as an author should be looking for distribution partnerships.
So I think that's interesting that you mentioned Beyond Blue as well, Katrina. So it doesn't have to be other businesses that you approach, certainly not for profits you could get into partnerships with as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you want to see a not-for-profit who does an excellent job on partnerships, Share the Dignity. Rochelle Courtenay, friend of mine, she has got partnerships down pat, and she partners with pretty much all the big brands. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, we did a book with the RSPCA a few years ago as well, which went really well. So yeah, certainly not-for-profits, you can get involved with them as well. Fantastic. Well, have you got one last tip to give people before we go, Katrina? What's your biggest tip you give people trying to use partnerships in their business?
My biggest tip for people, I would, okay, it's a way of doing business. it is definitely a way of doing business, and it can take a little while to bed down in your business. So don't be deterred if your first kind of collaboration doesn't go well. This is something that can completely transform and become a completely new way that you run your business. And for me, it has opened up incredible opportunities that I wouldn't have even dreamed of initially. So yeah, think about, just persevere. Generally, the real penny dropping moment happens after 3 or 4 months. That would be my big tip.
Fantastic. That's a great tip. Excellent. Oh, unless you've got anything else to add, Katrina, I think we might be done.
No, I just want to say a really big thanks it's so great to have such an engaged audience. So I think that our partnership here, Michael, has been a success. We'd give it a big tick, and I want to say thanks very much for all the feedback, and I'm glad you found it really valuable.
Yeah, excellent. Oh, big thanks to you as well, Katrina. We managed to get through it without me breaking anything, so that's good. Thanks so much for everybody tuning in. It's the interest has been great, and all the chats and comments very, very interesting. So thanks everybody for coming along, and you will receive an email to the video in the near future. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, see you later. Bye.
Bye.